The stagecoach lurched to a stop, dust settling like a veil over Catherine Morgan's traveling dress. She clutched the letter in her gloved hands, the paper soft from countless readings over the past 6 weeks. "Miss Morgan, we've arrived at the Hartwell Ranch," the driver called down. Through the window she saw it, the sprawling house that would become her prison, dressed up as sanctuary. Anything was better than returning to Boston, to her uncle's house, where his business associates looked at her like merchandise. At 24, she'd run out of options. So she'd answered an advertisement. "Prosperous rancher seeks educated woman of good character for marriage. Comfort and security guaranteed." The ranch house door opened, and a man emerged. Tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that seemed foreign against the rugged Wyoming landscape. Marcus Hartwell, 43 years old, the letter had said. Distinguished, wealthy. He descended the porch steps with the careful precision of someone who measured every movement for maximum effect. "Miss Morgan." His voice carried the smooth polish of money. "Welcome. I trust your journey was tolerable." He didn't offer his hand. Catherine stepped down, accepting the driver's assistance instead. "Mr. Hartwell, your home is impressive." It was, but impressive felt cold. The windows reflected sunlight like watchful eyes. Before you continue with Catherine's story, I'd love to ask a small favor. If you're enjoying this tale from the Wild West, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and leave a like on this video. Your support truly matters and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. Thank you so much. And now let's return to Catherine's journey. Come inside. I'll have the housekeeper show you to your room. The wedding is scheduled for Saturday, 3 days from now. That should give you adequate time to prepare. Marcus turned back toward the house without waiting for her response. Catherine followed, her heart sinking with each step. Adequate time, as if she were preparing for a business transaction, which, she supposed, she was. The interior matched the exterior. Grand, expensive, meticulously organized. Nothing out of place, nothing warm. The housekeeper, a stern woman named Mrs. Bradshaw, led her upstairs to a bedroom that overlooked the eastern pastures. "Dinner is at 6 sharp. Mr. Hartwell expects punctuality." Catherine nodded, too exhausted to speak. When the door closed, she sank onto the bed and finally let herself cry. She'd traveled 2,000 miles to marry a stranger who looked at her the same way her uncle's associates had, as an acquisition. The next morning, Catherine woke to voices outside her window. She pushed back the lace curtains and looked down at the yard. Marcus stood with another man, their postures rigid with disagreement. "I don't care what Father's will said, Daniel. This is my ranch now." Marcus's voice carried clearly in the morning air. "I'm not disputing that, Marcus. I'm asking for what's mine, the 100 acres along the river. Father promised them to me." The other man, Daniel, stood in stark contrast to his brother. Where Marcus wore pristine tailoring, Daniel's clothes were worn but honest. Denim pants, a faded blue shirt, a leather vest that had seen real work. His hat hung down his back by a cord, revealing dark hair that needed cutting and a face weathered by sun and wind. He was younger than Marcus, perhaps 30, with the lean strength of someone who lived by his own labor rather than others. "Father made many promises he had no right to make," Marcus said coldly. "Those acres are the most valuable grazing land on the property. You'll have to content yourself with your salary as my foreman." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I'm your brother, not your employee." "Then perhaps you should have stayed in school instead of running off to play cowboy. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a wedding to prepare for." Marcus walked away, dismissing Daniel like he was nothing. Catherine watched Daniel stand there, his hands slowly curling into fists before he deliberately relaxed them. He turned, and for a moment, his eyes lifted to her window. Their gazes met. Something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps. Understanding. The knowledge of what it meant to be considered less than. Then he put his hat on and walked toward the stables. Catherine spent the day meeting the household staff and being fitted for her wedding dress. Marcus appeared only at dinner, where he discussed ranch business with his accountant as if she weren't there. She picked at her food, the elegant meal tasting like ash. That night, she couldn't sleep. At midnight, she wrapped a shawl around her nightgown and slipped outside, needing air that didn't feel so suffocating. The barn glowed with lamplight. Curious, Catherine moved closer. Through the open door, she saw Daniel tending to a mare in obvious distress. "Easy, girl, easy now," he murmured, his hands gentle on the horse's swollen belly. "I know it hurts, but you're doing fine. Just breathe through it." Catherine must have made a sound because Daniel's head snapped up. His eyes widened when he saw her. "Miss Morgan, you shouldn't be out here." "The horse, is she all right?" Catherine stepped inside, drawn by something she couldn't name. "She's foaling. It's her first time, and she's struggling." Daniel returned his attention to the mare, his hands moving with practiced confidence. "Can I help?" The words surprised them both. Daniel studied her for a long moment. "You ever been around horses when they're birthing?" "No, but I can follow instructions." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise? Maybe respect. "All right, come here. Slow and steady. Let her smell you first." Catherine approached carefully. The mare's eye rolled white with pain and fear. Without thinking, Catherine began humming, an old lullaby her mother used to sing. Daniel glanced at her, startled, but said nothing. For the next 2 hours, they worked together. Daniel's voice remained low and calm, guiding both the mare and Catherine. She fetched water, held the lamp steady, and kept singing when the mare grew agitated. When the foal finally slipped into the world, wet and trembling, Catherine felt tears streaming down her face. "You did it," she whispered. "We did it," Daniel corrected, his own voice rough with emotion. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Catherine felt something crack open inside her chest. His eyes were the color of creek water in summer, clear and deep and honest. Nothing like Marcus's calculating gaze. "Thank you," he said softly, "for helping, and for the singing." It calmed her. "I didn't know I remembered that song," Catherine admitted. "My mother used to sing it. She must have been a good woman." She was. Past tense, the pain was old but never quite gone. Daniel seemed to understand. "My mother too. She died when I was 12. Fever took her." They stood there in the lamp-lit barn, a newborn foal between them, and Catherine felt more connected to this stranger than she'd felt to anyone in years. "You should go back," Daniel said finally, "before someone notices you're gone." But neither of them moved. She was a mail-order bride for a wealthy rancher, but fell in love with his poor brother who came to the wedding, Catherine said suddenly, the words tumbling out. "I'm sorry." Daniel's brow furrowed. "That's what they'll say about me, isn't they? If anyone knew what I'm thinking right now." Her honesty shocked them both. Daniel's throat worked. "Miss Morgan." "Catherine, please." "Catherine." Her name sounded different in his mouth. "You're marrying my brother in 2 days." "I know. Marcus is, he can provide for you, security, comfort, but not kindness." The words hung in the air between them. Daniel looked away first. "I should go. Thank you again for your help tonight." Catherine fled before she could do something foolish. But as she lay in bed, watching the dawn break, She knew the damage was already done. She'd seen what she couldn't have, and the knowing would haunt her. The next day passed in agonizing slowness. Marcus gave her a tour of the house, explaining which rooms were hers and which she was not to enter. His study, his late father's office, the east wing where he conducted business. Catherine nodded and smiled and felt the walls closing in. She saw Daniel only once, at a distance. Working with the horses in the corral, he didn't look her way. That evening, Marcus's business associates arrived for a pre-wedding dinner. 10 men in expensive suits, smoking cigars and discussing cattle prices like they were discussing the weather. Catherine sat at the table in her finest dress, ignored except when someone needed more wine. "Your bride is quite lovely, Hartwell," one man said, as if she couldn't hear him. "Yes, well-bred too. Her father was a professor before his unfortunate death." Marcus's voice held no warmth. "She'll make an acceptable wife." Acceptable. Catherine's hands trembled in her lap. She excused herself, claiming a headache, and escaped to the garden. The night air was cool, sage and dust mixing with the scent of the wild roses that grew along the fence. "He doesn't deserve you." Daniel's voice came from the shadows. Catherine spun, her heart racing. "What are you doing here? I work here, remember? Marcus may own the ranch, but I'm the one who keeps it running." Daniel stepped into the moonlight. He'd cleaned up. Fresh shirt, hair damp from washing, but he still looked uncomfortable, like he didn't quite fit in his own skin. "I heard what he said, about you being acceptable. It's true enough." Catherine tried to sound casual, but her voice broke. "I'm acceptable. Good breeding, adequate education, no prospects of my own. I'm exactly what he advertised for." "No." Daniel moved closer, his intensity startling. "You're more than that. You're kind. You stayed up all night, helping birth a foal, even though you didn't have to. You sing lullabies to frightened horses. You—" He stopped himself, jaw clenched. "I shouldn't be saying this. Then why are you?" "Because someone should. Because you should know that you're not just acceptable. You're extraordinary. And Marcus is a fool if he can't see it." Catherine's breath caught. "Daniel, I know you're marrying him. I know I have no right." He took off his hat, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I'm the poor brother. I've got nothing to offer you except 100 acres Marcus won't give me, and dreams of building my own ranch someday. But God help me, Catherine. I can't watch you marry him without telling you the truth." "What truth?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "That I've been half in love with you since you stood in that barn and cried over a foal being born. That I see a woman worth—" He stopped, shook his head. "It doesn't matter what I see. It's not my place. What if I want it to be?" The words escaped before Catherine could stop them. Daniel's head snapped up, his eyes searching hers. Don't say that unless you mean it." "I shouldn't mean it. I barely know you." "But you do mean it." It wasn't a question. Catherine nodded, tears spilling over. "I do, and I don't know what to do." Daniel closed the distance between them in 2 strides. He raised his hand to her face, hovering just short of touching. "May I?" The question undid her. Marcus had never asked, had simply assumed. Catherine leaned into Daniel's palm, and the rightness of it shattered something inside her. "I can't marry him," she whispered. "I can't spend my life being acceptable when you make me feel alive." "Catherine." Daniel's thumb brushed away her tears. "If you leave him, you'll have nothing. No money, no home, no security. I'll have my dignity. That's worth more than Marcus's fortune. I can't give you fancy dresses or a big house. I don't want fancy dresses. I want someone who asks before they touch me, who sees me as a person, not property. Catherine covered his hand with hers. I want you. Together, Daniel said, the word both question and promise. Together, Catherine agreed. They stood there in the moonlight, not kissing, not embracing, just touching, foreheads pressed together, breathing the same air. The moments stretched, precious and fragile. Then the house door slammed. "Catherine!" Marcus's voice cut through the night like a whip. "Where are you?" Daniel pulled back immediately, putting proper distance between them. But Marcus had already seen. He came down the garden path, his face contorted with rage. "What is the meaning of this?" "I was just checking the garden fence, Marcus," Daniel said evenly. "Miss Morgan came out for air." "Don't lie to me. I saw you touching her." Marcus grabbed Catherine's arm, his grip painful. "Inside. Now. Let her go." Daniel's voice went quiet and dangerous. "She's my fiancée. I'll handle her as I see fit." "No." Catherine wrenched her arm free. "No, you won't. I'm not marrying you, Marcus." The silence was deafening. Marcus stared at her like she'd spoken in tongues. "Excuse me?" "I said I'm not marrying you. I'm sorry to have wasted your time, but I can't go through with this." Marcus's laugh was ugly. "You think you have a choice? You signed a contract. I paid for your passage here, your room and board. You're legally obligated." "I'll work off the debt," Catherine interrupted. "However long it takes, but I won't marry you." "This is because of him, isn't it?" Marcus wheeled on Daniel. "You've poisoned her against me. You've always been jealous of everything I have." "I don't want what you have, Marcus. I never did." "Liar. You want the ranch, the money, the respect. Well, you can't have them, and you certainly can't have her." Marcus turned back to Catherine, his eyes cold. "You'll marry me on Saturday, or I'll have you arrested for theft and fraud. You signed a contract in Boston, agreeing to this marriage in exchange for transportation and housing. Breaking that contract is a criminal offense." Catherine felt the blood drain from her face. "You can't!" "I can, and I will." Marcus smiled, cruel satisfaction in every line of his face. "Unless, of course, you fulfill your end of the bargain." "Marcus!" Daniel's voice was steel. "Don't do this. Stay out of this, little brother, or I'll fire you and make sure no other ranch in 3 territories will hire you." The threat hung in the air. Catherine saw Daniel's hands curl into fists, saw him struggle with the urge to hit his own brother. "It's all right," she said quietly, her heart breaking. "I'll do it. I'll marry you." "No." Daniel stepped forward. "Catherine, I have to." She couldn't look at him. "It's the law, and I won't let him destroy you too." Marcus's smile widened. "How sensible. Daniel, you're dismissed, and you're no longer welcome at the wedding. Consider yourself lucky I'm keeping you employed." Daniel looked at Catherine, anguish written across his face. She memorized every detail, the way the moonlight caught in his hair, the set of his shoulders, the color of his eyes. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. Catherine let Marcus lead her back to the house. That night, she lay in bed and planned her escape. She would marry Marcus. She had no choice. But she wouldn't stay married. There had to be a way out. There had to be. Saturday dawned clear and bright, mocking her despair. Catherine dressed in the white gown that felt like a shroud. Mrs. Bradshaw pinned her hair and made disapproving sounds about her red-rimmed eyes. "A bride should look happy," the housekeeper scolded. Catherine said nothing. The ceremony was held in the ranch's grand parlor. Marcus's business associates filled the seats, along with neighboring ranchers and their wives. Catherine saw curious stares, pitying looks, calculating appraisals. She felt like livestock at auction. The minister droned through the service. Marcus's hand was cold when he took hers. Catherine opened her mouth to say, "I do," and the words wouldn't come. She couldn't. She couldn't do this. Even if it meant jail, poverty, ruin, she couldn't bind herself to this man for the rest of her life. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I can't." The gasps rippled through the room. Marcus's face went purple with rage. "You will say the words," he hissed. "No, she won't." Daniel stood in the doorway, trail dusty and defiant. Every eye turned to him. Marcus sputtered. "What are you doing here? I told you." "I know what you told me. I'm here anyway." Daniel walked down the makeshift aisle, his spurs clicking on the hardwood floor. He stopped in front of Catherine. "Come with me." "She's not going anywhere," Marcus snarled. "She signed a contract, which I'll buy out." Daniel pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "I sold my 100 acres to Thomas Garrett. Got a fair price for it, too. Enough to cover Catherine's debt to you and then some." He held out the check to Marcus. Marcus stared at the paper like it was a snake. "You sold your inheritance?" "It was never really mine anyway, was it? You made sure of that." Daniel's voice was calm, but Catherine heard the years of pain beneath it. "But it was worth enough to buy Catherine's freedom, so yes, I sold it." "You're a fool," Marcus spat. "Without that land, you've got nothing." "I've got my skill, my reputation, and my integrity. That's more than you can say." Daniel turned back to Catherine. "I can't offer you much. I've got a job lined up at the Garrett Ranch. Thomas needs a foreman, and he's giving me a small cabin to start. It's not fancy, but it's honest work, and you'd be free. No contracts, no obligations. Just a chance, if you want it." Catherine looked at Marcus, then at the assembled guests, then at Daniel. At the man who just sold his inheritance for her freedom. Who asked instead of demanded. Who saw her as a person worth saving, not property worth acquiring. "Together?" she asked, echoing their conversation in the garden. Daniel's smile was sunrise breaking through storm clouds. "Together." Catherine took his hand. The room erupted in chaos, Marcus shouting, the guests scandalized, the minister sputtering about the sanctity of marriage contracts. Catherine didn't care. She walked out of that parlor with Daniel, left her wedding dress behind, and climbed onto his horse in her undergarments and petticoats. They rode away from the Hartwell Ranch with nothing but each other, and Catherine had never felt richer. The Garrett Ranch was smaller, rougher, more real. The cabin Daniel had been promised was one room, with a wood stove and a bed that had seen better days. Catherine loved it on sight. "It needs work," Daniel said, suddenly nervous. "The roof leaks when it rains hard, and the stove smokes sometimes. I know it's not what you expected." "It's perfect." Catherine turned to him, her hair coming loose from its pins, her feet bare on the rough floor. "It's ours." "Catherine," Daniel's voice went rough, "I need you to understand something. I'm not Marcus. I can't give you servants, or fancy dresses, or security. Some winters will be hard. There'll be times when—" "Daniel," she crossed to him, placing her fingers against his lips. "I don't want what Marcus could give me. I want this. I want you. I want a life where I'm a partner, not a possession." His arms came around her slowly, carefully, like she was something precious. "You're not property," he whispered against her hair. "You're a person. You're Catherine. And I love you." The words were simple, honest, perfect. Catherine pulled back just enough to look up at him. "I love you too." When Daniel kissed her, It was nothing like the cold, perfunctory kiss Marcus had tried to claim. This was warmth and wonder, promise and passion. This was choosing each other, freely given, nothing owed. That night, as they lay together in the cabin's narrow bed, Daniel traced the bruises on Catherine's arm where Marcus had grabbed her. "I'll die before I hurt you," he said softly. "I know." Catherine pressed her palm to his chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady. "Go slow," she whispered, suddenly nervous. "It hurts when, I don't know what it's supposed to be like, but, hey." Daniel caught her chin gently, made her look at him. "We don't have to do anything tonight, or tomorrow night, or until you're ready. There's no rush." "But, Catherine, we've got our whole lives. I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you. Whatever happens between us, it happens when we both want it, at the pace you need. Understand?" The tightness in her chest eased. This, she realized, was what safety felt like. Not Marcus's walls and wealth, but Daniel's patience and respect. "Thank you," she whispered. "Nothing to thank me for. Just treating you the way you deserve." They fell asleep tangled together, and Catherine didn't dream of Boston or contracts or cages. She dreamed of horses and open sky and home. The next weeks fell into a rhythm. Catherine learned to cook on the temperamental stove, mended Daniel's worn shirts, and started a garden behind the cabin. Daniel worked long days with Thomas Garrett's cattle, coming home dusty and exhausted, but always with a smile for her. They were married by a circuit preacher a month later, a simple ceremony with Thomas and his wife as witnesses. Catherine wore a dress she'd sewn herself from fabric Daniel bought with his first wages. It wasn't silk or lace, but when Daniel saw her in it, he looked at her like she was wearing a queen's gown. "You're beautiful," he breathed. "You're biased," Catherine laughed. "Completely." He didn't sound sorry about it. Their life wasn't easy. The cabin roof did leak, and Catherine learned to position buckets to catch the drips. The winter was harsh, and they burned through firewood faster than expected. Catherine's hands grew rough from work, her skin tanned from the sun. She'd never been happier. Daniel taught her to ride properly, to shoot a rifle, to read animal tracks in the dirt. Catherine taught him to read better, to appreciate poetry, to see beauty in things beyond survival. One evening, 6 months after leaving Marcus's ranch, Daniel came home with news. "Thomas is selling me 20 acres, he said, barely containing his excitement. "It's not much, but it's good grazing land, and there's a creek running through it. I can start my own herd." "Daniel, that's wonderful!" Catherine threw her arms around him. "How can we afford it?" "I've been saving every penny, and Thomas is giving me favorable terms, says he appreciates good work and wants to see me succeed." Daniel pulled back to look at her. "It'll be years before we can build a real house, but it's a start. It's ours." "Together," Catherine said. "Together," Daniel agreed. They stood on their 20 acres the next Sunday, hands clasped, looking at the land that would become their ranch. Catherine thought about the woman she'd been, desperate enough to marry a stranger, trapped enough to consider it her only option. She thought about the woman she was becoming, strong, capable, free. "Do you ever regret it?" Daniel asked quietly, "leaving Marcus, the security?" Catherine turned to him. This man who'd given up his inheritance for her freedom, who treated her with respect and kindness every day, who loved her not for what she could give him, but for who she was, not for a single second. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of sage and wild grass. In the distance, the mountains rose purple against the sunset. Their cabin waited, small and imperfect and theirs. And Catherine Morgan, no, Catherine Reed now, knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Years later, when people asked how they met, Daniel would smile and say, "She was a mail-order bride for a wealthy rancher, but fell in love with his poor brother who came to the wedding." And Catherine would add, "Best decision I ever made." They built their ranch slowly, one fence post at a time, one calf at a time, 1 year at a time. The cabin became a house. The 20 acres became 200. They had 3 children who grew up knowing their worth wasn't measured in money or status, but in character and kindness. Remarried, eventually, to a woman as cold and calculating as he was. They deserved each other. Daniel and Catherine sometimes saw him in town, but they never spoke. There was nothing to say. One autumn evening, when Catherine was 40 and their children were grown, she stood on the porch of their ranch house watching the sunset. Daniel came up behind her, arms sliding around her waist, the way they had 1,000 times before. "Happy?" he asked. Catherine leaned back against him, feeling his solid warmth, his steady heartbeat. "More than I ever dreamed possible." "Me too." They stood there as the sky turned gold and crimson, as the shadows lengthened across the land they'd built together. From desperate beginnings to this, a life worth living, a love worth keeping, a partnership worth every sacrifice. Together, just as it should be. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Catherine and Daniel's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.